is this right?
That's true.
And also in regards to nitrogen narcosis, symptoms intensify as the depth of the dive gets deeper. Is that true?
That's true.
And the descent on the day of Miss Allen's death took 3 minutes. Is that accurate?
Yes.
So in 3 minutes, it was as if Miss Allen had had 5 martini glasses. Is that correct?
That's correct. It could be 5, however, coupled with hypertension, it could be many more.
I'm glad you brought that up. Let's talk about the hypertension. Based on Lee Allen's medical record, he had been diagnosed with this condition, right?
Yes, she has.
And active hypertension can make the risk of nitrogen narcosis and diving even greater. Is that right?
Yes.
But you concluded that her medication was keeping her hypertension symptoms at bay. Is that not right?
It was keeping her hypertension at bay at suitable levels for diving. However, once you go below, it exacerbates the effects of nitrogen narcosis, meaning that the medicine would have little effect.
So the medicine was keeping the hypertension at bay. Is that correct? But
At
you're
those
saying
levels.
that underwater, the medication no longer works?
Underwater, the further you go down, the more of an issue that hypertension becomes, meaning that it could exceed whatever the medicine was keeping at bay and create more difficult effects with her.
Now, you also said that after the hypertension diagnosis, Lee Allen had completed 30 dives. Is that right?
Yes.
And that based on this completion of 30 dives, you even believe that he should have been capable of diving.
Yes, below 80 feet, which was where she was at.
You didn't specify 80 feet in the report, did you? Oh, right? 80 feet. Okay. In the report that you made for today's court appearance, did you specify that at 80 feet, that he was able to successfully, or should have been capable of diving only at depths of 80 feet, or did you just say that Lee Allen should have been capable of diving?
She was able to dive at depths that were suitable for her, yes.
And let's talk about your actual investigation of the Hepburn dive. You determined that Reggie Rogers observed symptoms of nitrogen narcosis in Lee Allen within 10 minutes of the dive. Is this true?
That's true.
And after observing these symptoms, Reggie Rogers then gave Mrs. Allen permission to move forward alone on the dive. Is that right?
I believe it was during a time of emergency, so yes, she used her best judgment and sent her along.
So during this time of emergency, Mrs. Allen moved forward alone because she did not have a proper dive buddy. Is this true?
Because she didn't have a proper dive buddy, I don't believe so. That was the entire case.
Would she have moved forward alone had she had a proper dive buddy? Or would the dive buddy have gone with her?
It's just as possible that her dive buddy would have been tangled and she would have had to move along by herself.
Okay. I open-ended okay. So after Mrs. Allen moved along, are you aware of Reggie Rogers trying to help Mrs. Allen ascend after noticing the signs of nitrogen narcosis?
After she noticed signs of did she let her ascend? I believe that she was already in the dive, or inside the wreckage at the time, and she swam along alone, so I don't believe that Reggie was with her at the time to force her to ascend. No.
Reggie Rogers noticed nitrogen narcosis in Mrs. Allen as they were together. Is this correct?
Yes.
And at that time, did Reggie Rogers try to help Mrs. Allen ascend to alleviate these symptoms?
Which part are you talking about, when she was trying to rescue Reggie, or just during the time in general?
Prior to the rescue, just moments before, Reggie Rogers noticed that Lee Allen was suffering from nitrogen narcosis. They were together. There was no emergency situation. Are you aware of, during this time, Reggie Rogers trying to help Lee Allen ascend to alleviate the symptoms?
Well, from after reviewing her affidavit, Reggie Rogers, she didn't force her to ascend. However, it's also up to the diver themselves to ascend once they feel the onset of nitrogen narcosis, and unfortunately, Lee didn't do that either.
And are you aware of Mrs. Rogers trying to assist Mrs. Allen with her nitrogen narcosis symptoms in any way?
From the affidavit, no, I'm not entirely certain.
And during your investigation, you actually concluded that Lee Allen should have been pulled from the Hepburn dive based on dive experience, isn't that correct?
Objection. Can I object for BJ real quick?
Yeah, okay.
This is calling for an improper lay opinion from a medical doctor about the standards in the scuba diving industry, whether or not somebody should be pulled from a dive or not. What do you say?
Yes, although he is a medical diver, he's also trained in scuba diving, as he testified on direct, and he does know the standards within the industry, and this does not call for an expert opinion. It was his opinion as a recreational scuba diver and a medical doctor.
I did testify, but I was a diver.
Oh, you didn't? I thought you said that. Oh, okay. Okay. It's true that you're a scuba diver in your spare time. Is that not true? Dr. Montgomery, you are also a scuba diver. Is this correct?
Yes, I do some recreational dives.
And based on your scuba diving experience and your medical experience, you actually believe that Lee Allen should have been pulled from the dive. Is this not true?
Well, from my personal opinion, yes. However, in accordance to safety standards, I can't exactly testify to whether or not that was the correct decision or not.
You believe that he should have been pulled for the first reason based on lack of experience. Is this correct?
I'll renew my objection, Your Honor. We've established that he has been scuba diving, but this is a question of an expert in the scuba diving industry.
I believe now we're getting back to his conclusions on
Yeah, it was.
The scientific conclusions have nothing to do with Leon's lack of experience.
Could you repeat the last question that you asked?
Yes, and, well, you want me to respond to the objection?
Just repeat the
Okay.
question.
I asked him that he concluded that Lee Allen should have been pulled from the dive.
Because
Okay, and your response?
My response is, he's a doctor that's trained especially in water sports medicine and scuba diver relating accidents, and he is also a recreational scuba diver, and that he would be able to answer this question.
We'll let the witness answer the question just based on a completely lay opinion as a recreational scuba diver.
Yeah, question.
Isn't it true that you concluded that Neptune should have pulled Lee Allen from the dive based on his experience?
Well, I personally wouldn't have allowed her to go ahead. However, I believe that she should have pulled herself from the dive because she felt the onset of nitrogen narcosis and she knew that she was inexperienced.
And it's also true that you believe the professionals, in this case Neptune, should have pulled her from the dive based on her heavy oxygen uses. Is this not correct?
That would have been the best case scenario.
And this was your conclusion in your official report, based on your medical experience, that Lee Allen was using too much oxygen on the dive and should have been pulled, correct?
To which dive are you referring?
The Hepburn dive.
The Hepburn dive?
129 through 131.
During the Hepburn dive. Well, unfortunately, I know more than Neptune did at the time, because when she was going underwater, there's no way that Reggie could have monitored her oxygen levels for her. However, in hindsight, I'm pretty sure that they would have pulled her from the dive had they known that she was consuming too much oxygen.
You concluded that based on the preliminary dives that they had done and the oxygen usage that was used, that she should have been pulled from the Hepburn dive based on the earlier dives, correct?
Based on the earlier
Dr. Montgomery?
Based on the earlier dives, yes.
And furthermore, as a matter of fact, you previously stated there is no excuse, a direct quote from you, there is no excuse to permit a diver to attempt a 170-foot wreck dive when that diver has physically struggled on much easier dives. Isn't that correct, Dr. Montgomery?
There really is no excuse, but there's also no excuse for Lee Allen to be allowing herself to go on those dives when she clearly struggled and she knew that she was struggling. Plus, she knew that she had hypertension and could have been an issue to her diet.
Thank you for your very biased answer, Dr. Montgomery. No further questions.
Is there a redirect?
We just asked that fine, but it's still